We live?
We're live.
Oh,
We're live.
my God.
We're here.
Internet, what's happening?
We're back.
We're back. I'm back. Justin and Rob, back with you for another Horological Happy Hour. Thank you for joining us. A little early this week because Rob over here has to, scoot for some PTA meetings tonight. So we decided to move things up a little bit so that we could still join you.
Sweet.
Robert, you want to introduce the topic that you came up with?
I had to get the chat on my phone so that I could enjoy the comments and the queries from our marvelous audience that joins us each week.
I'll figure out how to disable that on your phone shortly.
You shall never. Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. As a reminder, please do subscribe to our channel. That helps us a lot in terms of getting these videos out there and getting more play in the algorithm. If you like this video, please hit like. And if you hit the little bell icon there when you're subscribing, it will give you notifications so that you know when we're going live for both this and the Take Fives that we do on Fridays. I think we're going to have a good one again this week.
Yeah, we got some wild stuff
some bangers
again this week, so it's been busy here. We got a lot of good stuff going on.
So this topic, which we wanted to do last week, but we pushed it so that we could do it together. This topic came to me through some other YouTube content that I was
in a vision.
In a vision, I was having a vision. I mean, with how hot it is in Boston these past couple days, I might be having a vision. It has been unseasonably warm.
The dad jokes are strong. Continue.
That's not even. That's, So I was watching some other guitar content, and they were talking about pricing and how when prices were adjusted for inflation, a lot of stuff that we looked at as expensive in the current market actually wasn't. And the question came up of like, are we just stuck in terms of like the time frame that we entered the hobby?
Yeah.
Are we stuck in that time frame of that's what things are supposed to cost? And I started thinking about that because one thing that a lot of people love to talk about the market with us. We probably do that for at least half of every single day that we're here.
Yes.
Is talking between each other and with our clients about the market and the state of the market and, the ebbs and flows therein. And a lot of people like to look at current MSRPs and say that, wow, everything has gotten very, very expensive. And even some pieces on the secondary market are way above, where they used to exist 5, 10, 15 years ago.
So after talking about the Cubitus, I think that was 2 weeks ago now, and the discussion about, the entry-level price point, or the entry-level price point that, the Stern family was talking about, we kind of started thinking about, just prices in general, MSRPs. There's been obviously a lot of talk, about inflation, and over the past few years during COVID, where manufacturers really a lot of them moved their prices significantly higher, and we started thinking about, were they just keeping up with inflation? Were they just, moving their products? Did they wait too long and they just had to make these big leaps, or were they actually taking advantage of the attention and the increase in interest in the pump in the market?
Yeah.
Exactly. So we tried to kind of pull some specific models that have been in production, for decades at this point. We have some that date back, to the 50s, and then some others that are just, iconic models. We forgot to grab was Aquanauts, but that's okay. I think we have a couple anyways. But so we just kind of wanted to talk about, we looked at, we're going to play with a little bit of an inflation calculator, and talk a little bit about value. What, price is one thing, but it's kind of subjective. What I'm willing to pay for something and what I think is worth it is very different from what you or what anybody out there might think.
That's a whole topic in and of itself, right? Because everybody looks at value a different way.
Yeah.
Like take a Tiffany stamp, for example.
Right.
Two watches exactly the same. One has that one extra line on the dial, and sometimes that can be as much as a 2x premium, which is bananas.
Right.
So I wanted to start this off with just a little bit of historical context, because you all probably know that I really enjoy kind of getting into the weeds with this kind of thing. And watches pre-quartz crisis were in a very different place than they were after the quartz crisis. Because before that, obviously, you know, Patek Philippe, Vacheron, AP, these companies existed and made what was considered to be a very high-end fine watch. But it wasn't quite the luxury item status symbol that it is today.
Well, when you think about it, the quartz crisis starting in the mid to late 70s, mid 70s, we'll say, essentially wristwatches had only been
Actually,
around.
It must have been earlier because the Royal Oak was 72, right?
True, actually,
it must
so
have
it's
been like
early
late
70s
60s
then.
or early 70s, something like that.
Anyways, you know, when you think about it, wristwatches were really only a thing for 40 to 50 years, essentially, before that.
Because Santos Dumont was
1919 or 1921, something like that.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was a fairly short period of time that the industry, you know, had kind of been in existence and things had been in production. And then, like you're saying, you know, obviously mechanical watchmaking was centuries old still at that point. But then the quartz crisis came along, and it really caused like a wholesale reckoning for manufacturers of how are we going to survive. How are we going to continue to create these things that people no longer value the way that they did previously? Thanks, David. How are we going to carry on, and how are we going to continue
How are we still going to sell something when we have this competition from overseas? And so the Swiss watch industry, they took two different kind of approaches to this. One was the Nautilus and the Royal Oak and the Ingenieur, like hiring somebody like Gerald Genta to design these things and say, please make us relevant. And then the other thing they do is they started to flip the script. And you look at a company like Rolex, and that's when things started to change from, you know, you had the Rolex advertising of like, if you were flying the Concorde, you'd wear this watch, or if you were climbing Everest, you'd wear this watch.
Right.
It went from that to the whole, a crown for every achievement.
Right.
And, you know, you start getting, obviously this is later, but you start getting like the whole, you never really own a Patek Philippe kind of thing. It's like, they changed the narrative from, hey, this is a great piece of kit. You should own this because it's reliable, it's durable, it's all of those kind of things. They continued to make watches in that style, but now they started saying, you know, this is a symbol of success.
Right.
This is a pinnacle to which you aspire.
Right. It turned a watch from a tool into an aspirational luxury item.
Yes.
And that was the decision that most of the, you know, legacy brands, that is the route that most of them went. You know, we're going to move significantly up market. We're going to charge, you know, dramatically more for our pieces.
Yeah.
And still hope that we can survive. And even so, many brands did not survive the quartz crisis, you know?
And it's funny because even looking, when we get into this pricing data, it's wild.
It is
It is wild. Like, you guys, if you are on right now and you're thinking about clicking off, you want to hear this stuff. It's crazy. It's crazy. So there was big changes there. So
I think we should.
Should we jump into that? Go ahead.
I was thinking maybe before we jump to that, we talk a little bit about, you know, you mentioned that, or we both mentioned that value is subjective. Yes, yes, it is objective. Yes, there are certain things that are worth more than others. But that being said, it is still a very subjective exercise where I might not care about a specific complication and I would never pay up for it, but some very simple, straightforward piece, I might be very willing to pay a lot more for.
It's an interesting thing, right? Because there are Patek Perpetuals that can be bought for less money than a 5711, which is a time and date only steel Nautilus.
Right.
And from a logical, objective point of view, that's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to kind of know, like, you know, with the 23 people that are watching right now, in the comments, let us know kind of how you approach that and what you value. Personally, for me, there are very few complications that I'm willing to pay through the nose for. You know, a perpetual calendar is great, but I can get a steel JLC, you know, master perpetual for a fraction of, literally a fraction of what a Patek perpetual calendar would go for.
Isn't there that, is it Oxen Junior or Oak and Oscar or something like that? It's that they make those very simple watches, and they make a perpetual that's like $5,000 or something like that. Like, it does exist, right? We have the technology, even mechanically, to make these things and to make them somewhat affordable. To me, there's still that romance of this is a perpetual calendar, though. And
but for me personally, like, I mean, we've talked about it a zillion times at this point, but I would much rather pay up for a unique, interesting design or a piece that has an interesting story that, you know, you can trace back to, you know, 100 years or whatever, than I would be, again, for just like a 5270 or something. You know what I mean? Not that I'm denigrating the 5270 or a Patek Perpetual Calendar, but it doesn't grab me personally in the same way. So for me, I'm more interested in paying up for a unique and, you know, special design as opposed to just something complicated.
So this is our question for you guys now. Throw into the chat, what is criteria number 1? What is the thing that most influences like your purchase decision? Is it brand? Is it heritage? Is it design? Is it complication? Like, what is that linchpin for you that determines how much you'll spend for something? And that's going to be an episode we're going to do maybe next week.
That's a good one.
Talking about how much more would you spend to achieve thinness, to achieve exclusivity, to achieve complication? Like, how do you rank these kinds of things and what will you pay for them? Because when you start looking at, you know, even just our inventory, like what we sell, what you can get for X dollars, it's kind of wild.
Yeah, totally.
It's all over the place.
Well, so here, flip it right back at you. What do you value? What is why are you getting comments and I'm not? What is happening?
Oh, look at that. Who's got the chat?
I've
got the chat.
No. This should not happen. All right. But
JSal16 says, I'm willing to pay significantly more for a brilliant chronograph when compared to other horological complications. So I like that. Like a cool manual wind chronograph, I'm with you. They are top shelf.
DJ says design. Complication.
Is it Dr. Lehman with the moon phase and a calendar and stuff? I like that. So complication or just one.
I like what Grant P has to say. So complications are just one aspect, and I agree. You know, it makes sense to pay up for some Vacheron métier d'art that's time only, and I totally agree there because there is a level of kind of craft and expertise and exclusivity that comes with that, even though it is just a time only, you know, a very simple piece, but it might have some incredibly elaborate enamel dial or whatever. It's kind of like the handwork Kunst collection from Lange.
Right.
There, you know, most of those pieces are incredibly complicated as well, but there are some.
But there are simple ones, or like the enamel dial Calatravas kind of thing, or the reverso with the art. I actually really like Rick on watches just went rarity, exclusiveness, which I think like depending upon how you define your idea of a collector, that's kind of like it, right? Like collectors are looking for that thing you can't find, right? Like maybe it's a solid case back Lange 1. Maybe it's a Rolex with some quirk on the dial, like a floating cosmograph or an error on the bezel or whatever it is.
It's interesting because I think that in every single collector's like arc, I think we all end up getting to that point where, you know, when you start out, you're buying, you know, what people have told you is valuable. You're buying what you see selling for expensive, you know, for high prices. You know, you're going after the big names. And then as you get deeper and deeper and deeper into the hobby, you know, as you learn more and more about, you know, the different little wrinkles of, say, a specific vintage, you know, era of a Submariner or whatever it might be, personally, I know that has been my track, that I get drawn into these little tiny details and the nuance. It's all about these little special things, and it's so dumb. If you told anybody who is not in the industry, or not in the industry, who is not into watches, like what you paid to get, you know, a chapter ring on your Submariner, like. They would think you're crazy.
The Daytona where it says 220 instead of 2, or
exactly.
Is that Speedmaster?
That's the Speedmaster. That's
Speedmaster with the 200 instead of the 200.
Or even a dot over 90, or you know, the APH Daytona, or the floating cosmograph. Like there's so many things that are just like nerdy stuff that like has value.
Or an Explorer 1 with the straight, or Explorer 2 with the straight hand, like a Steve McQueen first series where it's got the straight hand, and you're like, yo, look, the hand is straight.
Or a rail dial, like it's all dumb stuff. But yeah, so I agree with that. See if there's anything else here before we move on.
Oh, Dr. Lemon meant Timex has a moon phase and a calendar, which, Timex has been upping their game. And they're doing like mechanical stuff and things like that. I mean, it's so funny because like my G-Shock is a perpetual calendar, right? It's always right. It knows what year it is. It knows the leap years. Like, but it's digital. So to me, it's like, of course, you can program anything you want. Who cares? Like that to me is uninteresting.
Yeah.
To me, it's much cooler to think like somebody figured out like the whole Geneva wheel, which is part of how a leap year calendar works in a wristwatch is this Geneva wheel with these kind of like interesting, it's almost like Maltese cross-shaped kind of thing. And using the different levels of indent, it indexes whether it's a leap year or not. And to me, it's like the fact that somebody figured that out, probably, you know, Breguet with like pencil and paper, I guess quill and paper by the candlelight, is like mind-boggling. It's amazing. Right, well, and that Terra indicator or whatever. Right, the Earth phase, whatever they want to call it. Wild. Anyway, let's dig into some of this.
I want to jump into some of these numbers now.
Stuff.
I did a lot of research, so let's put it to good use here.
You did. I like this where like I have the idea and then Justin does this.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, we should talk about prices.
You can steal my homework. It's fine. All right.
Well, it's like a group project in school.
Yeah, where I do all the work and then we get an A and you just coast through. Somehow Rob is the jock in this situation. I don't know what the hell I don't know what just happened.
Could not be farther from the truth. That's so funny.
All right. So what we did is, so like I said, we tried to focus on models that have been in production for, you know, at least, you know, 20, 30, 40 years, something like that, so that we had some you know, some real time to play with.
And this is going to look like a greatest hits list because it is.
Well,
right, like that's.
I mean, because only the greats have survived and been in production for as long as.
But it's also, to me, it's the most relevant points of conversation because I mean, how do you talk about the market and prices and fluctuation and volatility without talking about this?
Right.
Which you can't see really. But I'll put it over here so that you can actually see what we're talking about.
So what we did is, for example, this Nautilus. The 3700 was introduced back in, what, 1976? So...
You did the research, not me.
So, Nautilus, the original 3700, introduced in 1976. We went ahead and looked at what the original MSRP was. We then adjusted that for inflation, compared it to the last known MSRP of, say, the 50s, like the latest version of this model. So when the
Hold on, before you do that, just as a quick note to everybody looking at the watch on my wrist, this is in fact a 3700. This is something we just took in that is going to be up on the website fairly soon. I'm not sure of the year of this one because I didn't take note of that before grabbing it to bring it down here. But you'll notice, like, you look at this and you're like, it's a Nautilus.
Right.
And this is the original design, the way Genta drew it up. This has no seconds hand. We have the ultra-thin movement that was a collaboration between Patek, Patek AP and JLC.
Yes.
And that everything else is very true to the design. It's even almost the same size as the 5711, with 5711 just being a little bit thicker because of the modern movement and the display back. This obviously has a solid back in there, but other than that, it's very true to form. It's very classic. It has the blue dial. It's ultra thin. It's incredible on the wrist. Like, this is a very special watch, in my opinion. And I love this thing. Obviously,
this was kind of a response to the original Royal Oak, which came out a few years earlier in '72. You know, where it was really kind of a shock to the market, where it was a stainless steel integrated bracelet sport watch that was obscenely expensive at the time. So the original MSRP for the 3700 back in 1976 was $3,100, which adjusted for inflation in 2024 dollars. Would anybody care to take a guess what that is? I guess, Robert, I don't know if you remember, if you know.
So $3,100 in 1976 got you this watch.
Right.
60 grand.
David says 60 grand. Wrong. No. So adjusted for inflation to 2024 dollars, that comes out to around 17,000 USD, which is pretty shocking, to be honest. Like, that doesn't, in the modern context of what we know watches to cost, that does not seem expensive at all. But this goes back to what we were talking about originally, where there was a massive shift in the watch market in general in the early 70s, where brands decided to move their pieces up market.
I was going to say, the funny thing is, that was expensive at the time. That was when that came out, and this was $3,100. That was expensive, and people were like, that's a lot of money.
Well, so the median household income in 1975 in the U.S. was $13,700, like roughly $13,700. So to spend whatever I just said.
I mean, that's
yeah, to spend $3,100.
yeah.
You know, you're spending 20% of the median, household income in the United States
Which
at
is
that
a big
time.
Purchase.
Huge
That's a big purchase. That's a car.
Huge,
right?
huge
That's
purchase.
A car.
Exactly.
And that's where I think you start to see watches of this level moving up a tax bracket, right? Like it's moving kind of out of the realm of where, you know, somebody who's like solidly middle class can buy something like this. I don't know. It's hard to describe because obviously everybody's economic situation and their priorities are all different. But it's like, I think about like guys who bought Submariners back in the day and how different that is.
We're going to get there.
We should do that next.
We'll do that next.
I think that's a great one because that also goes back.
But so to continue, so to close out the thought on the Nautilus, the final MSRP of the 5711, steel 5711 1A steel blue dial was $34,890. So, which was what, whenever that, that was a couple years ago now at this point.
Right.
But so essentially,
2 years at this
yeah,
point?
2022 it was, wasn't it? Even still, it's crazy to think, but $35,000 for a Nautilus doesn't sound that bad, but you can't get it.
You
can't buy it at retail. We're selling them for 3 times that essentially.
Couple of interesting comments.
Go ahead.
Saber6869 said, not in order, but rarity, metal, movement, brand, design. And I feel like that's like, at that point, it's like you're looking at the watch and it's kind of like, do I like this? Because I mean, metal, movement, brand, and design, that's the whole kit and
I mean, again,
caboodle.
and this is why we said it's so subjective because for me, like, I'm offended that you put design last, but that's just because...
He said not in order, or she said not in order.
Oh.
Sorry, don't mean to make
Oh, I
assumptions.
thought it was all in order. All right, whatever. What's the point?
And then Grant gets real technical.
I know. Grant, I wish I had an MBA, bro.
Yeah, my music degrees aren't helping me right now with that one.
But you're right. So we're gonna get into some Rolex stuff
NYU
now.
tuition was $3,200 a year.
Well, so the funny thing,
Back in the day.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Dr. Lehman, look, we also pulled average home prices, and again, so 1976. Closest, I guess, would be 1980 on the data that I pulled. But the average home price in the U.S. in 1980 was $47,200. So, I mean, $3,100 is not nothing.
That's almost a down payment.
Yeah, I was saying
Right?
it's almost
That's
10,
like,
almost 10%. But
yeah.
If you want to have a jumbo loan, whatever. All right.
If you don't have a trust fund, is that what you're saying?
Shut up, Rob. That only took you how long? It was 22 minutes until the
22 minutes in, first trust fund joke.
trust fund joke. Okay. All right. Let's talk about Rolex because this
Let's
is where
talk about the sub.
this is where it gets very interesting, actually. So there are obviously a lot of different models that you can kind of point to, and I chose to go all the way back to the first model that carried the Submariner signature on the dial, the 6204 from 1953. So in 1953, a small crown 6204 was around $150, which seems completely bananas. And even adjusted for inflation in 2024 dollars, 150 equals about $1,750. So $1,750.
And now, this is well pre-quartz crisis.
Oh, yeah,
right?
absolutely.
53,
20
obviously.
years, basically.
At this point, Rolex is making watches for guys who are actually bringing them in the water.
Exactly.
This watch is a purpose-built machine
Right.
so that you don't die
Correct.
when you're diving.
Correct. It is a tool. It is made to be used as a tool, abused, broken, damaged, and not to say it was made to be disposable, but it was made to be a piece that if it broke, if it flooded, it was gear, exactly. You would just replace it and move on. And that's part of the reason why they're so rare today, part of the reason why nice examples are so valuable. But anyways, $150 back in 1953, $1,750 adjusted for inflation. Today, the 124060, so a no-date ceramic sub, MSRP, everybody knows, is around $9,000, so $9,100. So,
and it's really interesting because Grant actually chimed in to say that since 2000, so we're only talking about 24 years here. Within that 24 span, he says, I think the MSRP of a Submariner or GMT is up 175%.
Yeah.
From then, which I think is right because I remember seeing them and I think it was like a $4,000 or $5,000 watch back then to buy a Note 8 sub brand new.
Yeah, he's talking GMT, but yeah, subs were a little less, yeah. So that obviously is again, $9,100 in the grand scheme of things when you're talking about watches today does not seem like that much, but to think about how much that has multiplied.
So I remember when this came out. And I have a Hulk here right now because, believe it or not, we don't have a black ceramic sub, whether 40 or 41, in the store right now. It is kind of nuts. We have a couple Hulks that are going to be priced probably tomorrow, but nothing in terms of black ceramic subs, which is wild. So I did pull this, but I remember when this came out, and I think the MSRP on the original 40 mil ceramic subs was 7 something.
Yes.
And people were like, that's a lot of money for a Submariner. And everybody was like, oh, it's become jewelry, and you can't like abuse it the way you used to abuse it because the ceramic is too brittle, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, we have found that none of this is true because in the time that Justin and I have been here, we have not dealt with one shattered bezel.
No.
Knock wood. Find some wood, please. But we have not, dealt with anything like that. They are still as durable and tough and reliable as they ever were. But it is now a luxury item, that you could dive with versus being a dive watch that, could be a luxury item. Wild. It's wild.
That's
I don't know what to say.
Hard-hitting analysis right there. One that I think we should jump to Lange because when it comes to the complaining and kind of the, again, people in the watch world talking about price increases, one that always comes, that is always mentioned is Lange. And I think they have a rap, or they've gotten a little bit of a rap recently over the past, say, 2-3 years of kind of taking advantage of their surge in popularity and really, really sticking it to buyers and aggressively increasing their prices. And
well,
honestly,
it's also, to me, there's also like a funny argument to be made there because I think of Lange and Journe very much in the same breath in terms of like they both came in. Lange was 94, Journe was 2000, right? So we're talking about very late entries into the world of watches where legacy, how many people in this chat mentioned brand, legacy? There were a couple other things that people said that like fell into those kinds of things where it's like, people are looking for that in the watch world. It is such a stalwart. What's Vacheron and Blancpain? It's Blancpain 1735, right? Like, and Vacheron likes to talk about how they are the longest operating manufacturer. I don't remember the statistic, but so many people rely on that. And like Patek Philippe, always independent, from the beginning till now, not owned under a conglomerate kind of thing. So the fact that these two brands came in when they did, and obviously people have done it since, but came in when they did and were able to establish themselves is quite amazing. And I think Journe and Lange, during the pandemic, both hit this kind of balance point where they went from being the new kids on the block to becoming a legacy brand, even though the legacy is only 20 years old.
Interestingly, though, I think that Lange takes more of a bad rap for increasing their prices than Journe did because Journe is kind of looked at as this like, he's an artist. He's an avant-garde creator, and he can do whatever he wants. And
also, one of the only brands to not put their prices online. Yeah. You cannot find the MSRP for Journe watches.
Lange doesn't either.
Lange does.
No, they don't. On their website?
Then they took it off because they were for a long time.
Yeah, I had to use
Lange was putting them on
our double secret
oh, really?
spreadsheet. Yeah.
Have they gone everything price on request? So see, maybe they're trying to take plays off of each other in that sense.
But again, I think I agree with you that there was a shift from, new kid on the block, indie, punching above its weight, kind of thing, to the established player in the industry. And part of that is because over the past 5 years, there has been such a explosion in high-end, independent brands, from Recepi and, all just Peter Mimidot, like all kinds of crazy things that didn't exist previously. It was really only Journe and only Lange kind of who were playing in that.
And Lange wasn't independent all that long because they were then under the Richemont brand for a while. So why don't I show off this lovely Lange one? Yeah. And this is a cool watch because this like the Sub, but more so on this because this is really still very, very similar to the original watch that was released in 1994.
It is.
We still have a 38.5 millimeter case. We still have a dial that has been governed in its proportions by the golden rule. We have the classic big date, the golden ratio.
Do unto others as you would have them do unto you dial. Yes, correct.
We're going to get there. That's the 25-26. We'll get there too. Sorry. The golden ratio, the Nautilus shell, all of that, Fibonacci, all of that business.
Oh my God. Help.
And then, you know, we have movements that Lange has become known for in terms of like their artistic level of finishing. And, you know, a lot of stuff done here purely for aesthetic purposes instead of being mostly functional finishing. The display backs didn't come till a year or two into it. The first Langes had solid case backs, which is a very interesting thing. And, you know, it is kind of a rare collectible watch when you can find one. So, give us the dirty.
So, when the Lange won, so the one that we're showing off is a rose gold version, but when the original yellow gold champagne dial closed caseback 101.001 debuted in 94, MSRP was 27,000 Deutschmarks, which was 18,000 USD.
And they were only available over there.
Correct.
So there was no USD
There was no
pricing at the
distribution,
time.
right.
What was that in dollars?
18,000 USD.
$18,000 for a Lange one.
In 94. So $18,000 in 1994. So that adjusted for inflation brings us to just over $38,000 for a, you know, for an iconic
Yep.
model from Lange.
Which, if that was the retail today, I would be quite unfazed by that. I would say this is a $40K watch at retail, sure.
Well, and that exactly right. I would not. I wouldn't bat an eye if you told me that this cost $40,000
look at that.
Today, you know, the modern equivalent of that watch, the 191.021, so updated movement,
Right.
Still yellow gold, still the same case size, still the champagne dial with the display back. MSRP 2024 is $50,000, right around $50K. So honestly, though, not that bad when you think about, you know. So going back to Pateks that we talked about, going back to Rolex that we talked about, it is a shorter time frame. It's, you know, 30 years as opposed to 60 years or whatever the hell it is, or 50 years. But still, that doesn't feel egregious to me. Where things get real,
50K is a lot of money for a Lange one.
but we're not talking about. We're talking about ratios here. I agree that 50K is a lot of money for a Lange one. I do agree that it is expensive and it should be. Like we said, I think 40 feels more reasonable for this. But in the grand scheme of things, in relation to where they started pricing back in 1994, it's pretty much you know, on track. Yes, it's up by whatever 20% probably, roughly. But
Hey, I owned a Lange. I have a lot of love for the brand. 50K for a yellow gold Lange one
I agree.
is too much.
I'm
money.
not disagreeing with you.
Too much money.
I completely agree. But where things get interesting in the numbers game is when we talk about the data graph.
Before we do,
Yes.
John D. says, my least favorite part of Lange movements are the massive bridges that hide the majority of the machine. So
Yeah, but the three-quarter plate is their whole thing.
that is their shtick,
Right.
right? And I think if you think in a more kind of like Teutonic style, the three-quarter plate makes a lot of sense. It is very German,
It is,
in my
totally.
opinion.
Yeah.
And the level of finishing and finesse that they are doing with just a plate is actually quite remarkable.
It's unbelievable, actually.
It is something. And I mean, my 1815 had the three-quarter plate on it, right? And I used to love staring at that.
That being said, I'd much rather stare at this.
We're going to
but-
get there where we can see all the bits here next, because that's where you wanted to go into. But I wanted to say that, like, there is beauty in the three-quarter plate, but it's a different kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Grant said that he didn't realize that Lange 1s were up to 50K new, makes secondhand prices look a lot better.
Yes, it
You're right, it
does.
does. Check our website. So again, like I said, where things get interesting with Lange is when we talk about the data graph. So we have a data graph up-down on hand here, so that is what we decided to go with.
Which makes sense, because that's the current production. So if
exactly.
you're going to buy a
I wanted to go
Dado-
apples to apples. You can't buy just a classic 39 mil data graph, you know,
Right.
time, whatever, chrono only anymore. You have to get the up-down. So this is the 405.035, reference 405.035. MSRP in 2012, when it was introduced,
for
was
the 39 mil.
Yes, was $87,400 in 2012.
Wow.
Which that's a lot of money now. That was even more money in 2012. So adjusted for inflation, That's $120,000. $120,000, which it's too much money. Again, Lange prices are too high. But currently, the 2024 MSRP is $121,000.
So this is right on track.
This is right on track.
If you went and you bought this very platinum datograph, brand new, from Lange, you are paying the same that somebody paid in 2012, you said?
2012, yes.
To buy the original platinum datograph.
Exactly. So
that's very interesting.
That I was surprised by
Look at
that.
that, by the way. There's all the bits for you. You want to see the bits? There's the bits.
I am going to own a datograph at some point. I will not have an up-down. It will just be a classic 39 mil platinum, standard. It's such an iconic watch. It's so beautiful. The movement is stunning. 120 grand is too much, though. That is way too much for that watch.
This whole...
Isn't a platinum Daytona the same price, basically?
No, less now. Well, secondary. No.
Platinum's less.
Platinum
retail is way less.
The MSRP
but you're getting a lot less watch.
Actually.
Like aftermarket.
It's still less aftermarket as
More
well.
platinum, less watch on that one.
They were for a while.
This, and nothing beats this black with the white, the German silver subdials in a platinum case. Yes, it's big.
I don't care,
but
though.
It's I would tolerate it.
Exactly.
100%. It is a masterpiece
It is.
of watchmaking. There's very few things that are as good as this. This, if you're a tactile person like me, pushing those buttons is a lovely experience. And it's a flyback. I can push this, it'll fly back. I didn't break it. Look
It's
at
so
that.
funny. I can literally hear the pop of the chrono from
'cause it's-
here. Like it's incredible. I
You
love
guys
it.
can probably hear that.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's nuts. And a quick change for the date. Like, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
This is probably the only one that's kept up that is like on par with inflation on our whole list.
It is the only
This
one
is
that is
the only
literally
one,
right
is the
online.
platinum datograph. That is so fascinating.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know why, but I feel like you pick this up and it's like, okay, this is 120 grand brand new. That's a lot of money.
Ton of money.
It's a lot
It's a
of
ton of
money.
money.
But I also can look at this and say, okay, there's a lot here too.
Yeah.
There's a lot here. Like that kind of makes sense to me. I think
Really?
the secondary
This one makes
prices
sense
make
to you?
more sense,
The secondary,
but-
yeah. Why would
But
you
I
ever
can
buy
understand
this new?
why the retail is where it is.
Ah.
I can rationalize a lot more than a 50K Lange one.
I guess.
What do you guys think?
I guess. Lange doesn't.
Which makes more sense, a 50K Lange one or a 120K Datograph? Or are we all just too high on our own supply?
Well, we are. Where do you want to go next? Because we got a bunch of other interesting things on here.
We do. We have so many tidbits. I think we should talk Calatravas.
Okay.
Since we're talking dress watches, because this is the one piece of research that I did.
Love Rob Tuda's.
And what's the up-down? Oh, real quick, the up-down. Take me to the wrist cam. The up-down is the power reserve at the bottom. Lange calls these an up-down because in German it says off and ab there, and that is literally up.
What does it say again, Rob?
It says Gil O'Shea. That is literally up and down. And so, when your power reserve is full, you're up, and when your power reserve is empty, you are down. And that is the up-down. The original 39 mil datagraphs, whether it's platinum or rose gold, did not have that. That was not there. So that's the up-down.
Yeah, and it's much better without it. It's so much cleaner, and it's just.
It's nicely balanced like this. To me,
it
it's
is
more
balanced.
the size. Like the power reserve, take it or leave it. But I like the size and I like the Roman.
I like how
symbol.
clean the dial is on the
Okay.
on the original. But okay, continue.
Patek Calatravas.
Yeah.
The Patek Calatrava is such an important watch in so many ways because, it defined Patek Philippe. That reference 96 really defined the Patek style in a lot of
Yes.
ways. It was the first watch. What made a Calatrava was that it was the first watch where the mid case was one piece of metal. So the lugs, instead of being put on after the fact, like think about like a Breguet where you have a round case and then you have these very straight lugs that are soldered on after the fact, Patek started making the middle case out of one piece of metal. So the lugs, are sculptured into the case like that. And that, I'm talking too fast, talking too much. At least I'm self-aware. So that is the Calatrava case. And it is, quintessential, in my opinion. There's not much better than a Calatrava in terms of like, I don't know, when I think of Patek Philippe, that is actually the first thing that
old
comes
man
to my
boring
mind.
watches.
So I have here what many would say is the best Calatrava.
Yeah,
And I thought was the best place for us to
Totally
start in
agree.
terms of this pricing. Because here we have the Patek Philippe 2526. And this is a watch that predates the quartz crisis, but this is a watch, Patek made this, and they touted this watch as the absolute best watch money could buy, and they priced it as such. So this watch came out in the 50s, and the best kind of pricing data I could find was that in the mid-50s, this cost you 2,000 Swiss francs. Back then, the dollar was stronger than the Swiss franc, so that translates to 454 US dollars. And in today's money, that is $5,341. What made this so impressive is that this was the first automatic movement from Patek Philippe. This was their first automatic caliber, and this has a baked enamel dial on here. I believe the tagline at the time was twice baked. I'm dead serious. That was it.
That's
they baked
amazing.
it twice.
I love it.
And there's a great, I think it's a Hodinkee article. There's a great article on how they can't replicate this dial, and they're not sure what they meant by twice baked. Like, was it baked twice initially? Was it baked once and then they cured it and then they baked it again?
Was
like,
the watchmaker twice baked
What-
when
hey,
he was making the watch?
you know, I don't know. What was Geneva like in the 50s? Were they in the 60s before we were?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But this was a big deal. And this is a marvelous watch. I
is.
love one of the little details that I think is so cool is the
double
PP
P.
crown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These are amazing.
There we go. Look at
They're-
that. It's so cool.
Again, like going back to like the nerdy stuff that we were talking about earlier, and the little tiny details that make the difference for, you know, watch freaks. There's so many. There are different generations of the 2526. You know, you have the dimple dials. You have
first series,
the first
yep.
series. They're regardless of what generation you find, they're beautiful classic pieces. They're the perfect size. They have the right thickness. Like they're not the thinnest piece. Like,
No, well,
it's
this
actually
again,
interesting.
early automatic.
Right,
And
exactly.
it's
So-
beautifully finished.
It
If you
is.
see pictures of this without the case back on, the rotor is lovely. Like it's a beautiful movement.
But these dials in person, the baked enamel is just, it has such like a luster to it. They're absolutely stunning with those boat, you know, applied gold, you know, baton, boat indices, whatever. They're just,
Dauphine hands. It's Patek.
it's perfect.
Patek,
It's-
Patek.
This is iconic
So
Patek.
the thing that is truly amazing about this is that this is a time-only watch, time-only automatic watch.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this was 2,000 Swiss francs. At the same time, Patek was making the 2499.
Right,
Which is a perpetual calendar chronograph, what we now consider a grand complication.
Yeah.
That watch cost you 3,800 Swiss francs. And the amazing data point from this was that if you bought this watch on a gold bracelet, it cost you 3,400 Swiss francs. Patek Philippe was so confident in how exceptional this new automatic watch was that if you bought it all gold bracelet, it was only 400 Swiss francs less than a grand complication.
That a
that
watch
is-
today is a $1 million
is $1 million
plus watch.
at auction if you can find one. So that is this watch. And again, in 2024 dollars, this would cost you $5,341. Compared to
Fast forward
today's
70 years.
Calatrava, I have the 5227J here, which is about as close as you could ever get
It
to
is.
a modern 2526.
Yep.
So we have a yellow gold case again. We have a lacquer dial that looks an awful lot like enamel, but it's not. It's
You know,
easier to make.
it would be. It's interesting to. I mean, obviously, in the 50s, lacquer dials weren't necessarily a thing. They were, you know, enamel dials were the way to go. It would be interesting if Patek made a 5227 or a 5227 with a true enamel
porcelain
dial, and that would
enamel
be
dial.
way more expensive. But it would be very cool if they did that.
But so this is about as close as we can get. And the cool thing about this is, you know, you get what looks like an old school solid case back, but it's actually a half hunter that opens up to reveal Patek's automatic. I really like this watch. I think this is truly beautiful. I love the hidden hinge that they did, so like you don't even know that it's a hinged case back. It's a 39 mil, so on the wrist, it's really lovely. It's beautiful.
It does wear very well, yeah.
Look at that. I mean, There it is. Again, it's Patek. You have a date now, of course, because all of the automatic Pateks have
It'd be better.
dates on them.
Honestly, and this is coming from the guy who says that the date is a date is the most
Yeah, you're a
useful
date guy.
function.
You're a
This
date
watch
guy.
would be so much better if it didn't have a date. So much better. Who cares?
This watch, I went on Patek Philippe's website this afternoon. This watch is $41,700.
Right. It's crazy. I mean, and it just goes to show you again the monumental shift
Yeah.
in how timepieces and wristwatches are now
Yeah.
viewed. At the time when this was made, yes, this was a high-end luxury,
Yes.
dress piece, but watches were so much more common, and it was more of just like a
Well, and everything was mechanical,
Yes.
right? Like you forget.
It wasn't
like,
special.
If you
It was, but
wanted
it wasn't.
to own a watch, you had to crank it up.
Yes,
Like they were
yes.
all mechanical. My grandfather was really funny. There were two things that he was not sad about losing in the evolution of things. One of it was manual transmission. He thought manual transmissions were the worst thing in the world. And he loved automatics. He thought it was like, the best thing since sliced bread. And then he loved quartz watches.
That's really funny.
He loved them.
because
And-
it's technological advancement.
Right,
You know,
and
I
he
can
looked
understand
at it that
why.
way.
Yeah.
He looked at it as these things were obsolete, and
Sure.
he found what I did to be so entertaining. He thought it was so funny because he
do
didn't
what?
understand
You sell
why
what?
somebody would pay tens of thousands of dollars for an old, obsolete watch when he could go to Walmart, buy a watch for $20, and it was absolutely spot on.
But again,
perfect.
that
was quite
and
the pragmatist.
that and this is the perfect representation of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
This was not a tool, but essentially a tool. It was just a very nice tool.
Right, but this was Patek the way we think of Patek today. This was Patek saying this is the best
You're right.
thing
You're
you
right.
can buy.
But again, it was still a more common thing in 1955, 1956, whatever.
Yeah.
This was normal. It was
Right.
very nice,
Yeah.
but it was normal. This is luxury. This
But-
is,
and-
and again, that is like the paradigm shift from this is a thing that everybody has, and some of them are nice, and some of them are more cheap, and some of them are more basic. This is now solidly a luxury item.
To add your color to this, which I thought was very cool. So that 2526 was $450.
Yeah.
Brand new. The average family income in 1955 was $4,200.
Yeah.
So that is what? 10%.
It's 10%. It's more
10% of your
yes,
income.
it's more than a month's income, a month and
So
a half's
it
income.
was not a small purchase.
No,
Again,
no.
even though obviously today we look at $400 and we're like, it's free, basically.
Right.
Um,
Grant P saying that he's rapidly realizing that if he ever buys a Lange, it's going to be secondhand, and he can kind of understand why some collectors have been upset about value retention. And exactly, like, I don't know why you would ever, unless you have money to burn or you need to have, you're for some reason, whatever. There are certain situations where you want to have something, a commemorative piece, something
there
special,
are people,
whatever.
though, who don't like to buy used.
But that's what I'm saying. Unless
right?
unless
there
you are that
people
person.
who are very much like, I want new.
But I can't climb in that person's head because if I can buy this piece that is barely used, like it looks exactly like it did in the Lange showroom. It has a brand new Lange strap on it for 60% of the original MSRP.
Well,
Like, what am I
it's
doing?
funny, right? Like, all of my watches are pre-owned.
Same.
I've never bought.
Well, no, actually not true, but okay.
I've actually, even my Steinhardt, like my first Swiss watch that I bought,
But like your G-Shock.
I bought that on the forum.
That's fine.
I bought that on the forum. My G-Shock, I didn't buy from, I have that John Mayer G-Shock. I didn't buy that from Hodinkee. I bought that from a friend. This jacket
Oh my God.
is pre-owned.
Let's get to the point. Get to the point.
My cars, like, I don't buy new stuff. I don't feel the need for it. I have a few things that I bought from new, but I don't. It's like, if it's convenient, I'll do it, and if it makes sense, I'll do it, but I would never be the kind of person who's like, I won't buy pre-owned because of whatever reason.
Yeah,
I'm
no, I don't
perfectly
have that
happy
aversion
to
either.
buy stuff that's been used before. It doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah.
I think what's an interesting conversation is when the secondary market starts driving retail prices, because when Jorn did a large increase in their MSRPs, which
Yep.
I believe was during the craziness of the
It was.
pandemic.
It was like
A
2021.
lot of people said that was in response to how the secondary market was blowing up on,
It was.
on those watches.
I mean, it 100% was. It was. They were trying to tamp down the insanity, I guess. What? Used underwear, exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
I
you
want to say
found
it,
the
but-
line. You found it. There it is.
Robert
I
has
won't-
a pre-owned toothbrush that he uses.
As Meatloaf said, I won't do that. R.I.P. I'd love to know what all
lost my
those
tongue,
OTC, CSE news things you put in there are. I don't understand any of that. Am I just old?
One last one that I thought we should probably talk about is the
Holy cow!
I know, we're
We have
almost
10
out of
minutes
time.
left.
I
This
know.
is nuts.
I feel like we should talk about the Aquanaut because like that was a more. I feel like it has a
Yeah.
spoiler alert. It's a pretty dramatic.
Do you think we could
jump.
do Aquanaut and Speedmaster
Sure.
in the same,
Yeah, quickly,
like in
let's
10
go.
minutes and
Yeah, yeah,
bang
absolutely.
it out?
Yeah,
Let's do. I'll show the.
So you
good
just have to
folks.
shut up and we can get through it. Anyways, all right. So Aquanaut.
CPO socks. Is that an invitation? Is that a business plan? Because talk to me. Let's do it. CPO
God.
socks.
Jesus Christ.
Who's certifying
Ted,
them?
I know you're on here. Get with
Ted
Rob
is
on
on
some
there.
CPO socks. All right. So Aquanauts. So obviously it's a more recent addition to the Patek model family. Debuted in 1997, the 5060. The original stainless steel, just like bare bones 5060 5060A. In 1997 was 6,900 Swiss francs, which is around 5,000 US dollars.
Oh, this watch with this jacket. Look at that.
Rob's feeling himself today.
Look at that.
The adjusted for inflation, again, it's around $5,000. Adjusted for inflation over the course of whatever that is, 27 years, that is $9,800 in 2024 dollars, which is, it's so funny when we ran these numbers, thinking of, it was such a shocking thing because Aquanauts being in the secondary market and selling things on the secondary market, we're kind of divorced from MSRPs. Like they're this more theoretical thing that like we hear people complaining about and talking about or whatever. But like we don't live in that world. We don't really care what MSRPs are because it's really what people will pay on the secondary market. But to hear $9,800. What are you are just giggling away
Watch
over here.
Report is really funny.
Guy has one glass
I feel
of
like you
scotch
and I
he
would get
loses his
along
mind.
really well.
But anyways, $9,800 feels shockingly cheap for a steel Aquanaut.
If I could get a steel Aquanaut, even a 5060, if
love
I
a
could buy a
5060
5060 for $9,800, I would own it right
I'd
now.
buy 5 of them for
I'd be sleeping
$9,800.
outside because the missus would not be happy, but I would buy it right now. If you have one out there, I'm open.
Compare that to a 5167A, so the modern Aquanaut, which we don't have on the table, unfortunately.
We don't have one in stainless. We have gold. We have it in rose gold with a Tiffany stamp.
Yeah.
That's what I was just wearing.
Amazing.
And I love this watch. I love it in steel. I love it even more in the rose gold with the brown. It's awesome. It's good. It's better than a Nautilus.
Okay, we have 8 minutes. I'm not gonna engage. A 5167 MSRP, which if you can get one, because no one can get it at MSRP, but $24,750 as of today. So it has gone from, adjusted for inflation, it's gone from $9,800 to $24,750. It's almost tripled in 27 years.
This is another one though where you look at that watch in the modern lens.
Yes.
At 24K, brand new. Sure.
I agree.
Right? Sure. And not even thinking about like the fact that you have to spend 50, 60 on the secondary market to get one, right? Whatever it is.
I think it's more interesting to think about kind of, again, going back to the Cubitus. When the Aquanaut was introduced in 97, it was billed as, it was a sport piece, it was going to be much more casual, and it was actually aimed, like they said about the Cubitus, it's aimed at a younger buyer because obviously the Patek buyer skews dramatically older, and so they were trying to appeal to a younger buyer, a younger market, and it really expand their footprint.
Also, interestingly enough, in 2000, you have the, oh no, that's average home price.
Thanks for.
In 95, median household income was $45,000.
He's got to go talk to teachers now.
$45,000 in 95 was your
Yes.
average income.
Yes.
And then in 97 when that came out, it was 10K.
Yes.
Right? It's like, so it's still,
It's still a
that
lux-
was
it's
still a very considerable purchase.
It's still a luxury item, but again, it compared to the rest of Patek's catalog at that point in time, obviously it's going to be a high-end timepiece, but it's going to be more affordable. I think. All right. So the perfect comparison here is that in '97 it was $9,800, and that was the piece that they were aiming at younger buyers.
Right.
A different demo to try and expand their appeal. The Cubitus, it's what, $45K is the entry level, which it's just it's crazy. It does not make any sense to me.
I wonder if that computes though, because I also think so here's the part that to me is hard. So you look at this at 41K, the Calatrava at 41, and then you look at the steel, the proverbial steel Aquanaut, which I don't have. I'll hold up the gold one.
At 25.
Say it's the steel at 25. It's like, okay, I understand how this is entry level, and this is the next step up because it's like the gold watch.
Right.
Yes. But then to say, hey, here's a steel watch, and it's $45,000.
It's like 44.
It's like, okay, wait a second. So the steel time and date is more than the gold time and date?
Right. I know. I don't know why I decided to bring this back to the Cubitus and my rage about that model and how it doesn't make any sense to me.
It's because I got you worked up. That's what I do.
I don't know if you can take credit for that, pal. Yeah, I don't know. I was when I ran the numbers, I was shocked that the Aquanaut has essentially tripled in price over the course of. And I guess it does make sense. They again, like anytime a manufacturer introduces a new model, if they're trying to expand their reach or they're trying to appeal to a different demo, it makes sense to get people interested in it and then slowly move it further up market over time. But you would think that if they introduce a new model, they would replace that entry-level piece to try and get new people into the brand at a similarly lower price point. You know what I mean? To try and.
But you know what? Though you see the same thing in other markets where sometimes, and this obviously is not what Patek's doing, but where the prestige thing is introduced first. And then there's this aspirational thing, and then they come out with something that is a little bit more accessible, and people can then say, "Oh, I can get into that."
Yeah, that is the normal way that
but
even
versus
luxury brands
introducing
do it.
something and then trying to move it up market kind of thing, like going the other way, like where they introduce the Premier and then they introduce the accessible version afterwards.
I don't follow, but okay.
Maybe you've had too much scotch. Maybe it's not me. Do I make sense?
Sabre 6860 or 6869. Yes, it's how about that date? Why not? Let's close it out with some of the crazy stuff. We have 3 minutes. We grabbed a few things that just came in this week that we wanted to talk about too.
Wow, is that true, Watch Reporter, that a yellow gold date, like in MSRP or secondary market? Anyway.
This, Rob, show that guy off.
I can do that.
This is a 36 mil date, rose gold with a green Aventurine dial. So this was new for 2024. I don't remember what the reference number, 228, 239, or I don't remember.
No, it's definitely a 5 at the end.
Is it?
Without a doubt, if it's rose gold. It's probably a 128235.
No. Hold on, I'll look. You show it.
When I'm right, you can buy me coffee.
You're definitely not right. It's not a 128. Get out of here. Hold on.
Okay, holding.
Holding. Come on.
Look at that. And we got diamonds in the Romans, which is actually super duper subtle. You didn't even notice it until I got this close to the camera. You know it's true.
Ah, damn it.
Sorry? Hold on, main camera. Main camera. What's the reference?
That's a 128235. Damn it.
Do we need to play it back?
No. Rob got one thing right today. Cool.
So yeah, it's a stunner. 36 is the right size. Look at this.
This
is the size a date should be. I love me a 36. I love me a Aventurine. I love me diamonds. I'll take it.
Yeah.
Quick sneak peek for those of you who will be tuning in with me tomorrow. I am going to show you this, and you're going to want it. I want it. That's all. We'll finish with that. What's to say?
You got 2 minutes, buddy. You can fill some time. Yeah.
No, that's all.
You guys show the Piaget.
Yeah?
No.
In our series. Why do you say that, intern Adam?
That's
why. This, to me, is like, hey, I love the 80s. I love the 70s. Maybe you like white powder.
I was going to say, it says, it screams, yeah, exactly, right?
Karen, what did you do with the drugs, Karen? That was everything we had.
It actually looks good on the camera. It is wild. Yeah,
It looked good
Studio,
right there.
Studio 54 all the way, dude. Absolutely.
I mean, that's it, man. That polo they made that was like some
actually like that
Aquanaut-ish weird thing, that was not a polo. This is a polo.
David in real
This
time
it.
is deciding that he likes this watch. It is.
Oh,
It's
it looks
insane.
good on the
It's
video.
it's
I mean,
absurd.
I'd wear it.
You would wear it.
I'd wear
You
it.
would absolutely
I'd
wear
wear
it.
it.
It's insane. That is that on the site yet? Oh yeah, it is. Yeah, it just went up live.
Yeah, we just put it up.
We did.
It's
yeah.
on the blast.
It's only like 35 grand or something. 36 grand.
Look
Only.
at that. Look at that. When
White
you think
gold,
about the
solid
other
white
things
gold
we're
and
talking
diamonds.
about,
I
solid
know,
white
I
gold,
know.
diamonds,
Yeah.
and the master, like, I mean, a watch like this from a jewelry company like
Right,
Piaget
right.
makes a lot of sense.
It does.
Just
It
saying.
does. Duh.
Oh, it was a lot.
No idea.
It was a lot.
Probably 100K. Yeah.
It was a lot.
Maybe more. Maybe I don't know. Solid yellow. I mean, solid white gold with a lot of diamonds on it.
You didn't get a full assessment of lot 37 in the Philippe
All right.
section. What do
Before Rob gets lost in the comments, we gotta end so he can get to his PTA conference now, smelling of scotch. But thank you guys for joining us. That was wild. I didn't think we had enough to talk about over the course of an hour, but somehow
Really?
we did it. Yeah, I don't know.
Come on,
It's-
with me, there's always enough
Yeah,
to
I
talk
know.
about.
Believe me, I know. Rob will be back with a Take 5 tomorrow. Join him. That sneak peek, that is one of the ones that will be on there. We had a lot of really
Yeah,
cool.
we
I'm
got
actually
nice
jealous.
stuff.
We had a lot of really cool stuff coming this week. So check that out. We'll be back next week. We'll probably talk about that thing you talked about earlier with.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah, sure.
think we
Why
should.
not? But yeah, thanks for joining. It was good to be back.
Like and subscribe.
Yep. See you guys soon.
Ta-ta.
Bye.